Hey, welcome to the Gracee Health Podcast, where I help women over 40 age with grace and strength. And if you are wondering how to get all of the different health optimization hacks in, stay tuned. We're going to talk about that today. As a personal trainer and nutrition coach, I love learning and educating women about ways to take care of themselves so they can do what they are called to do. Over the past 8-ish months or so, I have really dug into some more specific episodes that you guys are liking based off the analytics, but they are getting a little more deep. I had a whole 4-season episode on protein. We've talked about supplements. We've talked about chronic pain. And while it is important to me to pass along information, I never want to forget the grace aspect of this. I have started saying I help women age with grace and strength. It's that simple. And you're going to hear that more often because this is what I want you to remember about me. I want you to remember that, yes, we do want to have strong minds, strong bodies, strong spiritual lives, and we want to do all of that through a lens of grace. As I have mentioned on other episodes, I spend a lot of time reading health headlines and health articles. I came across one that was really interesting to me, and this was through the Apple News Plus app, but it is originally from the Sunday Times out of Britain. This article was written by Juliana Piscors. I hope I pronounced her name correctly. And the article was called, "Is Maximizing Your Life Making You Miserable? From queuing for a 5-star cinnamon bun to getting your steps in, the modern quest to live an optimal life might be making things worse." So of course, what I started doing is reading this article and overlaying that to us, to our lives, to our age and stage, and to those of us who also like to get a lot of information and maybe we listen to a variety of health-focused podcasts. I started realizing, first of all, I want to make sure that I am not in this maximization, optimization zone, that I'm always putting this grace over it. But I thought this is probably a good topic of conversation for an episode. And this is why. This article that was written across the pond from here in the United States hit home. I know that if it hits home with me, it's going to hit home with you as well. So I'd like to address that, and I'll tell you how I'm going to do that here in a second. But real quickly, if you will indulge me, I'm going to read a few paragraphs from this article so you can know where I'm coming from. So again, this is from the Sunday Times. It originally came out April 12th, 2025. Here are just a few of the things that this article said. This was a quote from a writer. She said, "Maximizing is like self-development on steroids. We're living in an age of overconsumption. There's something pretty gluttonous about this endless pursuit of bettering yourself. We're trying to break our personal bests, meditate deeper, go to the best restaurants, all with a more mentality. Even downtime becomes stressful. You're trying to unwind when you read something about sleep maxing, and suddenly you've fallen into a sleep optimization rabbit hole that advises drinking a magnesium cocktail and taping your mouth shut at bedtime." Okay, raising my hand. Who has heard something like this? Yes, I absolutely have. It goes on, and another clip I want to read is this. Here's the catch. "At the same time as we're exercising more, we're also feeling worse. Studies show rising levels of guilt when workouts are missed and someone you know or see online has worked out and you haven't. The pursuit of health and lean muscle has become another stick to beat ourselves with, where we're always one missed vinyasa away from an existential shame spiral." Oh my goodness. Amen. Right? So I hope you can see why this really piqued my interest and I wanted to address it. Then I tried to figure out, how am I going to structure this? And I really felt God saying, look, Amy, you have already defined what is important to this podcast. I released a Statement of Values episode back in October of 2021 in episode 12, where I identified the 6 things that are important to me and that are important to this podcast. So I thought, you know what? Let's take this concept of maximization and optimization and break it down into these 6 values. And if you don't remember what the values are, no worries. You certainly can go back and listen to that episode. I go into more depth on it, but I'm going to take those out. I will tell you the value and give you my thoughts as to how this relates to this maximization and optimization era that we are a part of. The first value is knowledge. Knowledge, of course, is incredibly important to making decisions about how we can take care of ourselves. However, the question is, where are you getting your information from? As of this recording, when I look at the Apple Podcast top shows in the health and fitness category, the top 10 shows are all hosted by men. Without totally going down a rabbit hole, it looks like the first research-backed female-hosted one is sitting at number 21. What's the problem with this? Well, of course, men bring knowledge, but as Dr. Stacey Sims says, women are not small men. Our hormones and our needs are different than what the men are bringing and the data that the men are bringing to their male hosted shows. We can't take what these dudes are saying and apply it to our bodies, especially perimenopause, menopause, and beyond. It just doesn't translate. So much of the research they are bringing in on what I call these bro optimization podcasts are done on young men in their 20s. I've got young adult men in their 20s or close to it, and my body is nothing like theirs. As I've learned from Dr. Stacey Sims, a lot of what is right for men is the opposite for women. I thought about doing another episode of stop doing the same things that your husband is doing, because what we need is so very different. I'll do a more comprehensive episode on this in the future, but if you just want a taste of this, go listen to my episode on why intermittent fasting may be sabotaging your health. That's just one example of the guidance for men versus the guidance for women and how it is so very different. And keep in mind, all of the information, the knowledge that is on these podcasts, these are not created equal for all people. Here are some questions to ask, and I'm going to do this for all 6 of our values, but here are some questions to ask as you are hearing knowledge and information to help apply it to yourself and to help cover all of that in grace. I want you to ask, is this research relevant to my body before adopting those new practices? Ask yourself, do I need this? There's a lot of information out there. There is no lack of information. Do you need all of it? Probably not. And by the way, this goes for my show as well. If you hear something on this show, ask yourself, do I need this? Is this going to help me, or is this going to potentially harm me? We have a new topic almost every week. I don't expect you to implement every single one of them. I want you to treat it like a menu. Open up the menu and go, oh, this looks interesting. I might try this. Or no, I absolutely don't want to do that. So you have permission when you are listening to this podcast to treat all of the content like a menu. Choose what works for you. The second value from which to view this lens of maximization and optimization is discernment. I've used this example before, but I want you to imagine walking into a big ballroom full of people. Maybe you're at a work event, maybe you're at a wedding reception. Pick and choose, whatever it is, but you are in a ballroom full of people. The chatter just fills the room. It's this low hum of chatter. You look around and find someone you know, and then once you find them and go up to them and start talking with them, that chatter just kind of tends to dial down because you're locked into the person you're speaking with. Be thoughtful about who you listen to from your health perspective and where you are receiving your health knowledge. Choose carefully and remember that you do not have to do everything they say. Just like I'm going to say this again, but you do not have to do everything I say on this podcast. Use your discernment of the person you're listening to. Do they have the same values? Is that important to you? Do they have the same goals in mind? Does what they say make sense? God gave you a spirit of discernment for a reason. Use it. Questions to ask yourself in the area of discernment. Is what you are hearing realistic? Is it sustainable? Sure, anyone can do anything for 3 weeks, but does this seem to work on an ongoing basis? Is it balanced? Does it allow for days that don't all look alike? And finally, does this make sense for my body? Yes, we already talked about the difference between men and women, but maybe you have a health issue that you need to work around. Maybe you have muscular skeletal issues that you need to work around. There's a lot of different things that you need to consider for your unique body. So when you are hearing something, use that discernment that God gave you to think and consider, is this what is best for my body? Value 3, diversity. Now, when I created this value for our show, I meant more of a diversity of people. I do not want a homogenous group of people coming on saying all of the same things. I'm fine with diversity of opinions. I welcome a diverse group of guests. But let's think about diversity from the diversity that God created in all of our bodies. Whenever I am speaking to groups of people, I will often ask people, okay, raise your hand if you have blue eyes. And some people will raise their hand and put it down. Okay, raise your hand if you have dark hair, up and down. And then we'll go through all of this thing, like maybe curly hair, maybe if you're tall, if you have a little more melanin in your skin. Like we'll go through all of these different ways that God created us. And then my point is, if we can embrace all of this, why are we expecting to all fit in this same body size and type and how it reacts to everything? We can't, because God made us uniquely. We can't take a one-size-fits-all approach to the masterwork that He created in all of us. We can't take all of these maximization and optimization tools and hacks and tips and tricks and whatever you want to call it and assume that it will work for all of us. It just can't. These cookie cutter approaches fail to honor our individual needs. So because of that, your health journey is going to look different than other people's, and that's okay. That's by design. Let's go back up to that discernment and use that in figuring out what does work. And P.S., that might take a little bit of time. It might be hard. You may not get it right the first time. That's okay. That's okay. Questions to ask yourself as this pertains to diversity. Does this maximization trick ask me to manage my body size, the same body size that God uniquely created? Does it allow for days that don't go according to plan? Because I don't know about you, but whatever it is, whether it's my workouts, my to-do list, my menu, or anything else, things just don't go according to plan. So does it allow for days like that? And then along those same lines does this ask me to follow a rigid plan without regard to my unique needs? Value number 4, encouragement. For years, I started this podcast with an intro that included your eating, movement, and body don't have to be perfect. You just need to be able to do what you're called to do. This is still a firm, strong tenet of everything I believe and everything I do here. I hope it is for you as well. God asks us to do the things that He is asking us to do, not to fit into a cookie cutter mold or look a certain way, or not even to sleep a certain way. With going back up to the beginning, tape over our lips. If you want to do that, that's fine. It's funny, side note, my husband and I were talking about that, and he said, I think if I did that, I would die. Look, I am always stuffy in my nose. I'm just not going to do that. I don't think that that would be a good thing for me to do. I do encourage you to experiment with things. I do encourage you to play around with your food or with your eating, or take some of the things that we talk about on this show and try it and see. There is nothing wrong with that. At the same time, I encourage you to remember that small, consistent actions will yield better results than pursuing maximization. We all know this, but our brain does not like that. So it's constantly fighting against us and saying, I want things now. I want change now. I want to feel better now. It just might take a little bit of time. I've got a few questions on here that's a little different than the other questions, but I still want you to consider them. First of all, what are you doing well right now? Like, what is going well in your health? Maybe it's consistent workouts. Maybe you are consistently making meals that have a variety of foods, a variety of color. Maybe you're consistently having some prayer time and some quiet time, and that's as good as you're getting right now. And you know what? I think that's pretty good. I want you to take a minute and think about what is something your body did well yesterday. I know yesterday can feel like a long time ago. So if you want to think about it today, unless you're like doing this first thing in the morning, then that doesn't really apply. But what's one thing that your body did well? We have to remember intentional positive thinking, not in a toxic way, but just in that practice of gratitude, that practice of thinking in a positive way can help our brain retrain to be more positive. So humor me and think about this. What is one thing your body did well yesterday? What else is going well right now? And then I want you to think about what is one thing that brings you energy. This can be physically, this can be mentally, this can be spiritually. Like one thing that when you do it, you're like, oh, I feel great. I'm in the zone. This feels so good. And then how can you work that into your day? The other side of that, I would say, is if this is something new and big and different, then what do you need to say no to in order to do that? Which I know is a harder question to answer. However, we only have so much time in our day, and most of us don't really have any extra time in our day. So that would be the other side of that coin, is if you're going to add something in, then what are you going to say no to? And I'm just going to give right here, right now, give you permission to say no to a workout if you need to do something to re-energize yourself. Value number 5, faith. If you've gotten this far and if you didn't know me, you can probably tell that I am a Christ follower, and faith is incredibly important and it guides all of my steps. In a very short nutshell, my story revolves around spending my young adult and early 30s focused on what I was going to eat, my exercise, and how many hours of exercise can I get, and how little food could I get away with, and trying to manage my body size. One day, I'm sitting there folding laundry, and God came to me and said, Amy, and it was a very gentle, sweet whisper. He said, you're spending more time thinking about the food you're going to eat and the exercise you're going to do than you're thinking about me. I wish that was an immediate about face and I stopped obsessing over that. Instead, it was like a rudder on a really big ship. It took a while to turn, and if I'm honest, I still will find myself going back to old habits. However, I now know where God wants my heart, and it is not in counting calories and counting steps. If our thoughts of health outweigh our communication with God, then we may and probably are investing in the wrong thing. In 1 Thessalonians 5, verses 16 through 18, the Apostle Paul tells us to rejoice always, pray continually, and give thanks in all circumstances, for this is God's will for you in Christ Jesus. I don't want to skip over that pray continually, having that constant communication with God rather than with what I'm going to eat or how I'm going to exercise. If this is piquing your interest and you're like, oh, I hadn't really thought about this at all, I really encourage you to go back to season 21, episode 8. This was a season where I broke down all of the principles of intuitive eating with other Christ followers who knew more or know more than I do about intuitive eating. And Kirsten Schmidt came on to talk about principle 8, which is respecting your body. She uses the word steward here, and she just does such a beautiful and rich job. Even if it's been a minute since you've listened to that, I highly encourage you to go back and listen. But one of the things that she says is our body is a gift and is imago Dei, which is made in the image of God. Here's a quote from her. She says, you are physically beautiful because God can't make ugly things. God is the author of beauty, and that beauty can't be changed. It can't be added to. It can't be taken away from. So remember, in this pursuit of maximization and optimization, our beauty does not change because God created us. And it's worth asking, are we making an idol out of our health, our habits, our maximization, our optimization? My story is, yeah, I used to. Sometimes I still do, but God pulls me back. And I can't help but include 1 Timothy 4:8, where he says, "For physical training is some value, but godliness has value for all things, holding promise for both the present life and the life to come." Absolutely. Get your body strong. Absolutely. Put it with the foods that God gave it. Absolutely. Fuel your body. We've talked about nutrition essentials in perimenopause and beyond just a few weeks ago. You can go check that out. However, the pursuit of God holds more value than all of that. So here's a couple questions to ask under the value of faith. Number one, is my health focus driving me toward my relationship with God? Because if it's not going toward, then where's it going? And then also, have I prayed about implementing this? If you hear something, I'm so guilty, you guys, of hearing something and be like, "Oh, I want to try that. Yes, I want to try that." I mean, just whatever it is, I just want to jump in and implement it. I wonder how much peace I would have if I actually paused and prayed ahead of time. If I actually took the time to say, "God, does this make sense for me? Does this make sense for the body that you created in me?" So something to consider. I'll consider it too. Finally, value number 6, grace. Of course, it's grace because the title of this podcast is Gracee Health Podcast. So of course we have to have grace as a value. Here's the truth. Your eating, your exercise, and all things health are not going to be perfect. Do not let someone tell you that it needs to be. And if it is starting to feel like information overload, then filter your information. Go back up there to discernment. Who do we want to listen to? Who makes sense? And let's be real. People have lived a long time without optimization and maximization. People have lived a long time without 60-second reels of telling us what to do to enhance our fill in the blank. My friend Betsy's grandmother passed away about a year ago. She was 98 years old, and 2 weeks before she passed away, she was still going to her small group. She was still going to her Bible study. She just lived this long, vibrant life. And Betsy one time said, "Hey, Grandma, what's your secret? How did you get to live so long?" And she said, "Strawberries, wine, probiotics, and I prioritize my sleep." Which we just chuckle about. And that worked for her. And I love that. Does that mean that that is the formula to all of us living to be 98? Probably not. The other thing I want to remind you of is our health and our longevity is reliant on so many things more than eating and exercise. I love looking at the blue zones, which basically are 9 commonalities in areas where they had a high concentration of people living to be 100 or greater. And if you want to learn more about the blue zones, you can go back to season 18, episode 13, why now is the perfect time to integrate the blue zone lifestyle. But half of the 9, or just about half, because 9 isn't divisible by 2 equally. But anyway, they're connection and mindset focused. They're not even talking about your food and your movement. It's all about connection and mindset. So these are critical areas for us as well. Let's give ourselves the grace when the hacks, the tips, the tricks, all centered around our physical health don't work out. Because it's not all just about that. And let's be honest, all of this maximization and optimization takes a lot of time and effort and resources, including monetary resources. And they're not guaranteed. We do not have control over the end of our life. We can do all the quote unquote right things and have an untimely death one way or another. God is in control of how long we live. Yes, we can play a part in it. Yes, we can steward our bodies well, but we do not have the ultimate control. I am not going to sacrifice my guaranteed today to try and do all of these things for a potential tomorrow. And this goes right along with Matthew 6:34. Therefore, do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own. Isn't that the truth? We do want to steward our bodies well, and we want to remember who is in control of our ultimate life, and that is God. And finally, under the subject of grace, I don't have any questions for you, but I would encourage you to accept the grace that Jesus came for. Give yourself the grace that He gave to us on the cross. He did not ask us to maximize our health. He did ask us to maximize our love for God and love for others. Period. And the end. I hope that helps you work through the very prolific headlines and reels and content about maximizing your health journey. And mostly, I hope this helps you give yourself some grace. And if you want some more grace, then be sure to sign up for my Nourishing Notes newsletter that gives you a fuller life in your physical, mental, and spiritual health. This is where I share food and movement and other things that I'm loving. And of course, it's all covered in a lot of grace. You can get that at gracehealth.com/nourishing-notes. Okay, that is all for today. Go out there and have a graced day.